All right, hello everybody. It is Jeremy England, and I am one of 4 music teachers at Ohio Virtual Academy. This is the Ohio Virtual Academy Music Appreciation Podcast, and I am joined by my co-host, Miss Daphne Check. How are you today, Daphne?
You know what? There's sunshine here, and for the end of January in Ohio, that brings me a lot of joy.
There is sunshine. It is cold, but...
We got told we're getting snow this weekend, too, so I got to hurry up and run to the grocery store and get bread and milk, obviously.
Of course, you got to prepare for the apocalypse.
Right, for my 3 inches of snow that's going to show up.
That's right. Oh, my gosh. So we are on episode 50. I thought that was a pretty impressive milestone.
I can't believe that. Yeah, I feel like we just started, but like in some ways it feels like we've been doing this forever, too. I don't know. It's weird, but maybe that's just the vortex of 2022 playing into that. But I can't believe we've done 50 episodes. I'd high five you if we were in person.
That's right. And it was COVID appropriate.
Yeah, okay, this is a very social distance high five that I'm sending you.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you said it's weird because today we're talking about another quote unquote weird instrument. And it is one of the most fun names in the musical instrument world. It is the didgeridoo.
Just say that to yourself, listener. Yeah, see how that is?
You know?
Yeah, I love the name of this one. This is so great.
Yeah, and so it's weird, and I know we're using this weird is kind of like a I guess American-centric word, but it's outside of like the norms of Western traditional orchestra. Like there's not very many didgeridoos in formal like conservatories or band programs in school.
Right. And I like, we use weird all the time in our culture, I think. But, in this case, I also feel like weird is good. Like we're talking about something that's cool. We mean it in a very flattering way. We don't mean it as a bad thing.
That's right. And the last weird instrument we talked about in the show was the theremin. If you remember, it's one of my favorite episodes and most nerdy episodes we've done, I think.
Yeah.
So.
You very much nerded out there, but it was so cool because I didn't know a lot about this either. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about the didgeridoo any more than I do theremin. I like to pretend that I am... really like, or that I know a lot about ethnomusicology, which I guess I do to some degree, but Australia, which is going to be somewhere we're talking a lot about today, is not somewhere I am very familiar with. And just like the theremin, there's all kinds of interesting little quirks about this. And I'm really looking forward to just kind of learning more about it because I don't know much about this. Like, I think a lot of people know it when they see it, know the instrument, but there's, and they think just it's really simple, but it's not a simple instrument. There's actually a lot that goes into this, just like the theremin.
That's right. Yeah. And we're kind of like bookending. Theremin is one of the most recent instruments we've talked about. And then the didgeridoo is it's actually an instrument that predates most instruments that you're probably familiar with. So it's had a lot of time to develop, but it hasn't really developed that much.
Right. Well, and it's the beauty in this instrument, I think, is the simplicity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think, let's just get into it a little bit. Maybe we can kind of expand on this. You were mentioning about the didgeridoo being one of the oldest instruments known to man, or maybe even the oldest known instrument. So let's clarify here. It's an Aboriginal instrument from Northern Australia, which I didn't realize was from Northern Australia. For some reason, I thought it was from Southern Australia, but I digress. And that was played far back as 100 or 1,500 years ago. So according to our notes here, apparently even as old as 40,000-year-old instrument. Like it's that old?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like been officially studied, but then there's some ideas that it might be about 40,000 years old, which is old.
Yeah, I was like, I can't even think of anything else that's that old. I mean, it's 2021. Like we're not even close to that, really.
Yeah, it's pretty bananas. We talked about guitars last week, and the oldest ones, like the illustrations they found were like Babylonian times, which would have been like BCE time. So that was pretty old as well. But obviously the guitar went through many phases like we had talked about. But this 1,500 years, very simple, but this 40,000 years old. And I guess as we get through talking about how it's made and what it really is, you can kind of make a case that makes sense. Like it's just basically a tube. But it is, you said the Aboriginal Northern Australia. It's a very important distinction in the world of didgeridoos, I have learned, especially in like the Aboriginal communities. Like the southern part it's really a northern instrument. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And some of it, so it's this tube they found, basically a wood, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But they also think it kind of developed on the coast because of like trading the ivory. They were able to trade on that northern side of Australia with like mainland Asia and Indonesia and all those countries kind of up there. So it kind of gained popularity, I think, through that trade. So that's what some people are speculating.
So, well, I mean, that would make sense. We know in music, in any type of music, whether it be, United States music or world music, something like that, music travels, and some of the way it travels is through trade. So, I mean, I think that would make kind of sense that is how some of that worked. Yep.
Through trade, through moving and just capturing unique sounds. And
we definitely know that too about music is people take their musical culture with them. And we've talked about that like 100 times. And I preach that to the class like all the time about that. So that makes sense. So it's completely made of wood.
Originally, yeah. It's a wind instrument made of wood. We call them aerophones, 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 which basically
nice spelling,
means,
by the way.
Thank you, the sound is produced a column of air that vibrates back and forth. So that's all a very fancy way of saying that you blow into it, air vibrates, and sound comes out the other end.
Right, and there's a whole category, and I never say it right. Is it the whole classification system for music? Is it I never say this name right. You know what I'm going to say? The Horgsback. Why can't I ever say that right?
Yeah.
I have a thing. I know it when I see it, but trying to say it. You ever do that with words? Like you try and pronounce
all
them and
time.
you always fall over it. There is a system of, and this particularly shows up in world music, since everybody has different musical traditions. There is a instrument classification system that is used by musicologists around the world. And that's where Jeremy's pulling the word aerophone. Aerophone literally means just an instrument that uses air, or that a person has to put air through to make it work. Now, here's the interesting thing, though, as it comes back to the didgeridoo. You play this like a brass instrument, which probably sounds really weird, but the sound is produced by vibrating the lips. So if you remember, we've talked a lot about in the past that like a trumpet player, for example, has to buzz their lips. Which, why I just did that, I don't know, because you're the trumpet player of the two of us. I should have really let you do that.
No, thank you. Great.
Thank you so much. But you buzz those lips to get the sound, and that's what a didgeridoo does, even though it's made of wood, which I think is really cool, because we don't, a saxophone, you're not buzzing your lips. This is fairly exclusive to the didgeridoo, at least to the limited knowledge I have.
Yeah, it is the one website I was looking at that we have links down here. One of the didgeridoo websites, the guy classifies it as a wooden brass instrument for the very reason that you said. And that's kind of the problem with classifying instruments outside of like Western orchestral families, is you try to fit them into something that they are not necessarily like. So like you have the brass section, which is all those trumpets and tubas and trombones, and then you have like the woodwinds, which are the clarinets and the flutes, and they're all very Western. But then you get like this weird instrument like the didgeridoo, like you said, you play it by buzzing, but it's all made out of wood, and so you classify it as a brass instrument. It's kind of like when people mix up classifying a saxophone as a woodwind, because it's usually made out of like metal. Same way with flutes. So why is that a woodwind? But it's like you said, the way you produce a sound is very unique. So that's where the system that you were mentioning and trying to attempt to say, which I don't even remember the name of it, so I can't even attempt it, is so important because as our musical understanding and classifications broaden, like sound is produced in one of four ways: vibrating columns of air, a vibrating string which vibrates air, striking a membrane of some sort, and what's the other one?
Did you say strings?
Strings,
woodwind, or aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, electrophone. You could count too.
Yeah, so it's 5.
That's a newer one. So yeah.
Yep.
I'm so ashamed that I'm talking about this and I cannot think of, I can never pronounce it. It's Horns-Bostel sax, if I'm pronouncing it right. But I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. It's just one of them words that I trip over. But if you're interested in learning more about the classification system that's used around the world, that's what you want to look up.
Yeah, and that's important because when you're learning music from, and we've alluded to this before, if you're learning music from a traditional Western mindset, especially learning music from like band or orchestra, I was never taught this classification system really until like somewhere in college, I think, and it wasn't even hit on that much. So it just goes to show, even as us as teachers, it's not a familiar concept even all the way into our vocabulary yet. Yeah,
like we teach those classifications, but it's kind of like a unit and then we move on a little bit. But I took a non-Western class in college. It was a part of my training, obviously. And we spent a semester basically on this, but the other thing, too, is just like any other thing, instrument classification. There's more to ethnomusicology than just instrument classification. This is just a way to get them organized in a way that makes sense for everybody. So that's right. What it's for.
That's right.
Yep.
So back to our didgeridoo, and it's traditionally, it's wooden, like you had said, but specifically a eucalyptus tree, which I think is interesting because eucalyptus smells great.
And I was thinking that too.
Right. It's used, I think, in like some like natural remedy type stuff, like a kind of a soothing thing. But what I thought was the most interesting part about original didgeridoos is it is truly like a nature-made instrument that so a tree is not hollow, generally, unless it's dying or dead, or, in this case, termites eat out the middle of the tree. So once a tree is dead, so eucalyptus tree is dying or dead, and living termites, I guess, I don't know, one website said living termites as opposed to like dead termites. I didn't get it, but I'm just going to leave it. Living termites eat the dead wood on the inside, so the tree heart,
delicious.
essentially. But they leave the outside wood alone because it has some like sap in it, and that repels the insects. So they're eating the inside out, and they go through when the didgeridoo makers go through. They like walk through the eucalyptus grove, or I don't know what a group of eucalyptuses are called.
A group of eucalyptus.
A grove.
A grove. No, it just me. I'm sorry. I went off on a small brain there because I was like, what is he? No. Sorry.
A grove.
No, I like that.
And they take they basically walk through and they like, tap on the end of it and they see if it sounds good. And this is one of those things that you probably have been doing it for a really long time, so you can like hit the end of it with an axe or something to hear what it sounds like, and if it's hollow enough and it has a good pitch. And then they cut it down, and then the rest of it is just kind of like shaping it and tuning it to the right.
So this is fascinating to me because, when we're talking about that instrument classification system, again, if I refer back to it and the whole ethnomusicology aspect here. One of the things I find very interesting about this is kind of a naturally made instrument. So it needs perfected by, mankind, which happens a lot. But one of the things I find so interesting about this is that nature kind of gives this to us a little bit. You know, the termites are helping us out, which I'm like, all right, good job, termites. You don't really help us usually any other way, but because you certainly don't want termites in your home. But I just found that very interesting because this is a great example of older cultures, or, you know, back in history, we didn't actually, you know, have the manufacturing capabilities that we do today, but this is how we got a lot of instruments, and this is still being used. They're letting nature kind of do the work to make these instruments. I just think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's super cool. And like your pitches and your keys that your didgeridoo is really dependent on how long it's grown and how long it's had access to grow. And if it's a trunk, which traditionally the trunks, but like smaller didgeridoos can be made out of really large branches. And so there's not much. Once you cut the tree down, I was watching the guy talk about how it's made. There's not much else you do. You like take like a draw knife, you know what that is? Like it's two handles, and you can cut wood like pulling it towards you, drawing it towards you. That's what they do to get the bark off the side of it. And so the bark comes off. They use chisels on the inside to kind of help shape it and finish out the hollowing out. And then they paint it, you know, and that's pretty much it. You got yourself a didgeridoo.
That's just fantastic. And I really like to, and we'll talk about this shortly, but I really like that there's art on it, that it becomes a visual piece as well for a lot of people. Like, you can't really decorate your trumpet, sort of. No. You're not putting stickers on your trumpet, right?
No, I'm not.
No, probably not. But that's not the case here. It's viewed as obviously a musical instrument, but it's clearly viewed as a bit of art as well.
Yeah,
that's a little bit unique. I'm trying to think of like other instruments that have, I don't know, paintings or whatever on them. And at least in Western stuff, I can't think of anything because, like I said, you're not putting, you know, stickers on your violin or whatever. You know, that would be like, don't do that, you know, because it would be very not good. So anyway, I just think that's really cool too. Yes, for sure. If you were putting stickers all over your cello, somebody's going to have to say something to you about it because you shouldn't be doing that. So anyway, I just think that's a really cool part about the didgeridoo is that art aspect.
Yeah. Intentional art, of course.
Yes. Intentional art.
Yeah. And so that, I think, as you kind of like understand how it's made, and you can maybe see how this could be an instrument that existed 40,000 years ago. Because if you just need a hollowed out tree, you know, like kids walk around today and just like do random stuff all the time. So if like you just pick up like, hey, there's a hollow tree, let me like blow into it, you know, and you got yourself an instrument and it sounds good. And now I don't know when this took place, probably a long time before now, but there's multiple lengths which result in like multiple keys, or you could have like the key of E, kind of like harmonicas in a way, just a little bit less control. You know, like a harmonica, you bring a case of them and you pick up like the B major harmonica, kind of same pose. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just like anything else, you know, the bigger the instrument, the lower the pitch, right? You know, tubas aren't playing in the upper register of a treble clef, that kind of thing. So this is kind of the same way. And this is universal with a lot of instruments. The bigger they are, the lower the pitch. The smaller they are, the higher the pitch. That doesn't change anywhere in the world because physics. So
because of physics, yeah.
Because science.
Yeah. So at the end, you might put a little bit of wax where your mouth goes now, and that is to help perform a better seal and to make it more comfortable, you know, because blowing into the edge, the hard edge, maybe if it's smoothed out end of a tree, probably is not that comfortable. But you need a seal so air doesn't escape out of the sides as you're blowing into it.
I would think that would be that would be extremely important, because I'm just thinking about putting a wood piece up against my face. Sorry, I keep covering my mouth even as I'm talking about this. putting a piece of wood against my face, that would be very painful if you're putting air through it and causing any kind of friction or pressure, because I would think that would cause splinters, like maybe around your mouth. And I know it probably wouldn't. I'm being a little silly there, because obviously you're shaping that wood and, smoothing it out. But it would just seem like that would be such a necessary component, because I feel like that would be just almost unbearable, especially with how much like air. And the next thing we're going to talk about circular breathing and how long you're doing it. That would just be incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think the wax, does provide that comfort. If you had like braces in school, you literally put wax on your brace wire when you played brass instruments to protect. But I think a lot of it is like it helps perform that seal, because if you're taking a natural wood element, you can shape it as much as you want, but the wax will really help create that seal to make it able to be buzzed, And so original didgeridoos were just, like I said, hollow pieces of wood, hollow eucalyptus trees that were shaped and then made the right length to put into the right key. So that's another element of the human craftsmanship is you might cut it down, but you might shave a little bit more off to put it in the right key, or to get the sound that you want. But now, I mean, it's really, when we talk about it's just a tube, didgeridoos are made out of all kinds of stuff now. Like, when I was reading through the list, they listed all kinds of crazy stuff, like the normal stuff like plastic, different woods, metal. I saw like leather, which I thought was an interesting one.
Leather?
I don't know about that, but that's what they said.
How would that honestly work? Because leather, wood is not pliable, like leather. I have questions.
I don't either. I didn't see it. I'll have to look it up. But that's literally what the website said. All kinds of materials, and leather was on there. Glass is another one. The one website sells a carbon fiber travel didgeridoo. So it's like a telescoping didgeridoo that is made out of carbon fiber, so it's very light.
That's the coolest thing maybe ever.
Yeah.
I'm going to
It's about $400. I looked it up.
Oh, I'm not ordering that. Never mind.
But it comes with like a travel case, It sounds like it's cool, You can take this. And so when you have that type of stuff, it's easier to shape a mouthpiece that will allow for less air to escape. Whereas you're using like these natural elements, that wax will help to create that seal. So I just think it's interesting that it really kind of has evolved into whatever you can get your hands on. And we have, what's that horn that you play at like soccer games, the Zulu?
Oh,
Vulu,
more stuff
Vizu?
I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. It's Google horn. But I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I meant I am Googling that right now. I realized what I said. Oh my gosh. Okay.
But that is like, and it's simple. That is essentially what a didgeridoo is, just with more craftsmanship. It's just a tube you blow into. And that doesn't get into like, we'll talk about some techniques here in a moment, because it's not just blowing air through a tube. And that would be a shame if after, at the low end 1,500 years, but the high end 40,000 years, if that's all we decided that we're going to do with this tube is just blow into it. There's a very complex set of techniques and unique sounds that have been developed for the didgeridoo. Did you look it up? Did you see what it was?
Okay. I just want to go, before I try to say this, I just want to remind everybody, I'm going to probably say this wrong. Vuvuzela.
That's right.
Does that sound right?
Vuvuzela.
Is that right? Vuvuzela?
That sounds right. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go with it. Listeners, just write in and correct me, because
that's right.
Apparently, I'm just today not going to speak words correctly, but I'm glad I'm in the ballpark. Hopefully, there.
Oh my gosh! So the biggest technique for playing circular breathing, for playing the didgeridoo, is circular breathing. So as you're talking about that instrument, say it again. I already forgot it.
Just close the tab, okay. Jeremy. Come on.
I'm going to call it the soccer horn.
Soccer horn.
the soccer horn, if you could play that nonstop, it would be very annoying. But in the didgeridoo, it is encouraged to do this thing called circular breathing, which is you continue to buzz. So like Daphne demonstrated earlier, you're buzzing your lips, and that's creating the sound that's vibrating the air inside this tube. Well, at a point, you like run out of air. Everybody just does. You have to, if you're blowing air out, you're going to run out eventually. There's a technique where you basically fill up your cheeks, essentially. I never really could master it. You fill up your cheeks, your mouth, and you continue to push air through the instrument while breathing in through your nose. And so the air never stops. And that's cool. It's impressive. It's even more impressive if you realize that there are recordings of didgeridoo players who, I think the longest one they have is 50 minutes. So regularly like 40 minutes, but a 50-minute long performance of somebody never stopping sound on an instrument that you have to blow into is just mind-blowing to me.
I have always found the concept of circular breathing to be, it just blows my mind. I just find this completely fascinating because I don't have any concept of how to do this, and I mean none. I have tried to do this, and I even tried last night when I was looking at the notes, and I just end up snorting like a pig. There is no concept for me that you can do this circular breathing thing, because I encourage you all to try it. First of all, see what sounds you make, because you're going to make some weird sounds. And maybe it's just because, again, maybe it's because I'm a percussionist, and so I already don't have a normal concept of breathing to create sound. That's not how I'm hardwired to do. But I can't do this at all. And so I encourage anybody who can't, because, I mean, seriously, it's so hard. You can't do this, can you? Can you?
No, barely. I never practiced it a lot. I never really had a need to practice it. So I didn't. I did a little bit, and I had friends that could do it. And I will say this: if you're going to practice it, it's way easier when you have resistance pushing back at you. What I mean by that is, like, when you're blowing, like, you can hear the sound first of all, but it's focused, and so when you can have that target, kind of, it's almost easier to breathe in because you can hear what's happening. So if I just am like breathing out, like that's I think it's more difficult that way personally. It's kind of like if you're playing guitar, or like you have a power amp and it needs a load to work correctly. If you run a power amp with nothing to receive the load, it will blow up the power amp. And that's kind of how I think of like circular breathing. You need a load so you can make it work right. So if you're going to practice it at home, the easiest way to get you, like if you don't have a trumpet or a trombone or a didgeridoo in your house, is you can just make a circle with your thumb and your index finger, and then kind of make a fist, and you can blow into that, like that, and it will provide the resistance.
I'm trying it too.
Yeah, it's you'll need. So,
my glasses just fogged up, but okay.
Nice. It is difficult though, and
it's hard.
When you watch didgeridoo players do it, it's fascinating. It almost looks a little aggressive sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It does look aggressive.
Because you're taking that, like, when you talk about pushing air through still with your cheeks, or like leftover air in your mouth, like, it has to be fast, because the breath in has to be quick, because you're trying to fill your lungs as much as you can in a short amount of time, because there's only so much air you can like push out through your mouth. So it seems like a pretty aggressive inhale, and it will sound loud because you're breathing in through your nose aggressively. So.
Wow. Seriously, go look this up if you're not familiar with it, because this I think right here, this idea of circular breathing is one of, if not the most fascinating part about the didgeridoo to me, because this to me defies all laws of physics in a way, and to do this, I tried to look up a stat last night about how many people in the world can actually do this, and I couldn't find one, because I gotta think it is an extremely low percentage, because it's like the whole what is it, like only a certain amount of population can curl their tongue, because it's like, you know what I mean? And I felt like this was kind of in that. So I know we're talking a little bit about the simplicity of the instrument, but the actual performance of it is quite complicated, because this is really an incredible skill to have.
Yeah, and again, it's because it's existed for so long. You need to like develop techniques for it. So circular breathing is a huge one. Some other techniques to playing it is changing like your tongue position or your mouth position, so it changes kind of like the overtones you're getting out of the instrument. So the way most brass instruments work is you blow, and you can have like partials or overtones, which an overtone is like another frequency that's vibrating twice as fast or 3 times, a ratio. Overtones are you hitting or partials, sorry, you're blowing into the instrument, and you can blow a little bit faster, and the air column, once it kind of like reaches a critical mass, and this is like a poor explanation of it, but once it reaches like you like lock into the next note up or lower because of the way the air is vibrating in the column. Like if you look at an old bugle, like a military bands used to play bum bum bada bum 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 bada bum, you can play all that without pressing down a button because of partials and overtones. So didgeridoos work like that. They work on a lot of overtones, but they also have another technique they develop is you can sing. And singing might not be the right word, but you can imitate sounds, and specifically like animals. So like a dingo, which is an Australian instrument, an Australian animal. So as you're playing, good players can like manipulate their vocal folds. So we call them like vocal cords a lot of times, but the voice box, this whole area in your throat, they can manipulate those to sound like different sounds, essentially animals or singing. You can manipulate those while you're playing air through your instrument, and can have multiple sounds happening at one time, which I thought was pretty cool. And the last technique, which is pretty relatively new, there's a lot of adjectives, relatively new, is beatboxing while playing the didgeridoo. And I think there's a video I linked in the description where a guy explains a simple beatbox rhythm that you can play while using the didgeridoo, which just gives it a whole nother element of sound, that you can create rhythm. So where you have like a 50-minute nonstop performance, and that's the recorded length, so who knows how long the longest is, but a 50-minute nonstop, then you could have the exact opposite, where the didgeridoo is not played for more than a second or two at a time because you're beatboxing, which gives another element to the instrument that it didn't have before. So, yeah, I think it's super cool. Didgeridoo is a great instrument. It's a good instrument to kind of put in the background as you're studying too, because it's kind of is like
that drone.
Yeah, it's very droney. That's a good tone, a good word for it.
Mm-hmm. Drones are great in that respect. But like in this instance, if you're just listening to somebody play 40 minutes of circular breathing didgeridoo, it's just going to be like one pitch that's going on in the background, and your brain isn't getting your brain won't be getting as much audio input because of that. So it kind of drowns out anything else, and it does help you focus. I've done that where I've listened to just like a didgeridoo or some kind of droning while I work when I need to settle down. I've done that before.
I believe it. I didn't look into the science too much of it. Now I was thinking about it. There's a whole section in the Wikipedia page about the physics, which were a little bit beyond my comprehension, at least when I was researching it.
Yeah.
But
it's complicated.
It is complicated. But like the binaural, we talked about this before, like music and studying or healing. I can't remember one of the previous episodes about binaural beats, which is a slight out of tuneness between two ears, which kind of creates a wah 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 sound. The didgeridoo, because of basically the physics and the ratios of the air going through, at least the way I understood it, is creating that kind of modulation in pitch. So you'll hear a didgeridoo and it'll sound like wah 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 wah, and it's kind of like modulating back and forth, which is almost like a trance-like state. Where the binaural beats you're listening in the headphones, it's happening very quickly between your ears. The didgeridoo is much more spread out and only one instrument. But I think that might be part of the reason it's so easy to put in the background because it can just kind of drone on, and there's just subtle enough movement that you're not drawn to it, but it kind of relaxes you.
Mm-hmm. I actually used that yesterday, the binaural, because I just needed to get my brain to stop being ridiculous. And weirdly enough, it's funny you bring this up that we're talking about this, because I was like, wait, Jeremy and I did a podcast on this. What's that thing? And I put my headphones on and did it for a little while, used it for a little while I was working, and it was really helpful, actually. So it's funny we're talking about this now. It's like things come full circle.
That's really funny.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just found that weird.
That's cool. I like it. It's or shows we're consistent, I suppose.
I suppose that's true.
So the didgeridoo is used in ceremonial dancing and singing, and it's, again, the Aboriginal tribes of Northern Australia. This was like an instrument in their culture, so it was significant to them, to that culture. So it was used in all kinds of various activities as well as recreational activities. So it wasn't like it was super serious sometimes, but then it was also nice and fun other times. It's a very versatile instrument in that regards, especially when you look at some of kind of the, as ethnomusicologists have kind of studied instruments through ages and through different cultures, I think sometimes they can fall into just, seemingly we might classify them into just ceremonial or recreational instruments a lot of times. Or like if you look at Indonesian gamelans, like that can be both, but like you need a lot of people and a lot of stuff to make that happen. So
yes,
it's usually
we
a little bit more formal.
We should do an episode about that sometime, because
you're probably right.
That's fascinating. I'll put that on our list. All right, moving
nice. On. Yeah, where the didgeridoo is just one tube. It could be multiple. You can have multiple didgeridoos together, but you can just be by yourself in your house playing a didgeridoo, and it could be fun. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then an instrument that's been around as long as 40,000 years is going to be important to whatever culture or group of people has carried it on that long. And so there will be different elements that are associated with the instrument. And what I mean by that is, like, we just talked about not putting stickers on your cello, right? Because in the classical music world, the cello is represented by just, certain classes of people or certain types of people. Like it's more than an instrument. It's a beautiful instrument, but it can be kind of a symbol that represents something more. And you might impart some of your culture onto an instrument, and that's what happened in the didgeridoo. Like when I was talking to you about this the other day, like this was what captured my attention. Like this is going to be an interesting episode because there's like controversy surrounding the didgeridoo, which I thought was fascinating.
Controversy.
Yeah, like there's never any of that.
Yeah, never. No, that's a completely new concept.
So I'm going to read the first line or the first kind of paragraph of this controversy, and it is from the Wikipedia page, so it's linked in the show notes. But traditionally, only men play the didgeridoo and sing during ceremonial occasions, and playing by females is sometimes discouraged by Aboriginal communities and elders. In 2008, publisher HarperCollins apologized for its book, The Daring Book for Girls, which openly encouraged girls to play the instrument after some Aboriginal academics described such encouragement as, quote, extreme cultural insensitivity, end quote, and, quote, an extreme faux pas, part of a general ignorance that mainstream Australia has about Aboriginal culture, end quote. So basically what that is saying is HarperCollins, so big publisher, huge music world publisher, comes out and says, hey, girls, we want you to, try stuff, so play the didgeridoo. And then some people from that culture were like, whoa, hey, don't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. And then HarperCollins said, sorry. And that was pretty much
that was a lovely synopsis, I want to say. Yeah. So girls are not, quote unquote, supposed to play the didgeridoo. After I read, because I was reading this for the show, and I was like, so they're just not supposed to at all?
I think part of the controversy was that, especially like if it's like a sacred instrument or ceremonial instrument, probably is a better word for it. Like if it's only used in certain situations by certain segments of the population, then encouraging it can be culturally insensitive. It's kind of like the idea of cultural appropriation in a way, like, hey, this is a cool instrument, just do it. And these, I think, the way I'm reading it is the Aboriginal academics are saying, well, like, you're displaying ignorance about the of this instrument. And so some of it, I think, is like stepping on toes of just, this is a cool instrument. And so just taking the instrument for what it is, an instrument, and not understanding the cultural significance of it, which I think happens a lot in ethnomusicology if you don't do it well and you don't understand kind of what you're doing. Ethnomusicologists, remember, go and study music outside of their culture. In the Western world, so as Western academics, that is like a lot of like Indonesian music, Thai, Japanese music, Australian, African music, like stuff like that. And so you go and you take recordings like, oh, cool, those drums sound cool from Kenya, and you just like take it back and just impart it into stuff without understanding the significance of it. Can, I'm sure, rub people the wrong way.
Sure. Anytime you're using a piece of somebody else's culture for what could be considered your own benefit, there's always going to be some backlash about that. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's instrument or religious belief or food. I mean, the list could go on and on. So I guess I could see this, but there's also that part of me. It's like, but I'm a woman. And I wanna,
yeah, of course.
I mean, play.
The very next sentence here says, Linda Barwick, an ethnomusicologist, says that though traditionally women have not played the didgeridoo in ceremony, in informal situations there is no prohibition in dreaming law. So I think, I don't know what the right answer to this is, and I feel for you, like you say, like, I'm a woman, I want to play the didgeridoo. Like, it stinks that like some cultures and some elements of the culture are so ingrained that progress is not able to be made, or it's really looked down upon. And this happens, I mean, this is a debate that transcends music. We looking at it now, not to be like political, but like the removal of statues is kind of like this idea, like what is important and why is it important? And if you do something to it, like you're just erasing people. And I think
it's always a gray area,
yeah,
because perception is everything, right? So how one person views something might be totally different than how another person views something. So where is the line? Where is the line for all this? Because perception becomes reality. So, and based on your perception, where is that? I think.
Yeah, the last line of this section says the taboo is particularly strong among many Aboriginal groups in southeast of Australia. So there you go. It has moved southeast now, where it is forbidden and considered, quote, cultural theft, end quote, for non-Aboriginal women and especially performers of New Age music, regardless of gender, to play or even touch a didgeridoo. And this is, again, when I was looking at some of these websites about the didgeridoo, one guy was, I'm pretty sure he was from Australia. I could hear an Australian accent in there. And then the other guy I was listening to about beatboxing, which is kind of like a new agey music type thing, was like a white dude from New York City, So like, here's a guy like taking the didgeridoo, implementing a technique and being very good at it, but selling like classes on how to play it. And so he might look at it as like, hey, I'm spreading this cool instrument out into the world. But the Aboriginal people might be certain sections, especially here, so the Southeast Aboriginal people might say like, you're stealing our culture. And I don't know. I always don't know what the line is, and I think it's like step by step. And I think there's a way to spread and appreciate an instrument while also being respectful to its culture. But again, I haven't lived with an instrument in my culture for 40,000 years. So
very well said. Very well said. These roots run deep. And I think it definitely, it's, again, I just think it's in the beholder. Like, how we view it is definitely different than how somebody, an Aboriginal person might view it. So, and I think some of this just comes from, if you're, hope this makes sense. If a person who might be sharing an instrument that's not from their culture will hopefully be sharing it because of their respect and love and admiration for where this instrument and those people came from. And you can't measure respect from somebody. You can't, that's not something you know because it's internal. So because intent is not measurable, I think it makes it that much more complicated to know whether it's being done right or wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there is a place for kind of the stalwarts and old guard and those who are preserving culture to really speak up on behalf and say, you know, what you're doing is wrong. But I also do think that like there's advanced with an instrument. And I guess it all lays claim to like who owns the instrument, you know, like who owns where it came from. But it is important for people to speak up and say, hey, we're glad you like it, but what you're doing is not very respectful. And there's always going to be stepped toes, and there's always going to be people who are not happy either way. But I think what you said is important, that when you're teaching an instrument, it is important to understand, like, I guess, the history of it. If you're going to step out that way and say, I'm an expert in the didgeridoo. Like, if you're just like some Joe Schmo that has a didgeridoo, you know, like it'd be cool for you to know the history of it. But like if you're going out and saying, hey, I'm an expert at the didgeridoo, and I'm going to sell all my stuff for it, but never ever mention like why it's important, I think maybe that's a little bit, because you're profiting and benefiting off of something that you did not create or own. And I think that's where some of the extreme sides of it can come into.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, because you yourself, you have a didgeridoo, right?
I do, which is funny that we're talking about females and playing it and stuff, but I actually do own a didgeridoo. Now, granted, it's a smaller one, but it is from Australia. A couple years ago, I have a friend, her name is Gail, shout outs to Gail, and she went to Australia, and before she left, she was like, can I bring you back anything? I'm like, yeah, bring back a didgeridoo. And I had kind of said it flippantly, and lo and behold, she came back really with one. And so
that's awesome.
It's amazing. Actually, I should have grabbed it. Hold on a second. We might have to cut this out. Hold on. I'm going to put it in my hands so I can describe it, because obviously we're an audio podcast, so I can't show you, but maybe I can link a picture of my own in the show notes, perhaps. Mine actually has like a kangaroo on it, and it's got blue and yellow paintings on it. It's probably only about 2.5, 3 feet long. Okay. Obviously, she couldn't get a full didgeridoo to come back with her. So that is, I have a shorter one. I have to admit, I've not played it. As a matter of fact, the top of it, I still have the wrapping on it because I don't want dust in there until I need to find like a cap or something, because I want to be able to play it. But I really just kind of use it as a decorative art piece. Because one of my goals in life is to like fill a room with instruments from other countries, and like through friends traveling or something. Like I have some native instruments from Hawaii from a trip I took several years ago. I have some from Japan from another friend. And so when I get these instruments, often I don't play them a ton because I want to appreciate them as just the beauty. And I'm not really versed in all these instruments, obviously. So I don't really play them. So I can't say that I've played the didgeridoo. I think I tried it a little bit when she brought it back, but I don't think I messed with it really a whole lot because the carving on it is just really lovely. And I just think it's beautiful. And I keep
You don't want to mess it up too much?
I kind of don't. I really don't. So I just kind of keep it as an art piece. But if I can, I have a picture somewhere. I don't know how that would work in the show notes, but if I can find one, I'll put a picture of it in the link. But I really love mine. I'm really proud of it, and I just kind of admire it a lot.
Nice.
So, yeah. So shout outs to Gail.
That's cool. I was expecting you to play it, but if you got the wrapper on it still, I won't make you play it for the show.
Ooh, yeah, it's, I mean, I can try. I guess I could maybe try, but I can see the wax on it, which is what's the funny part. Like, I can see the wax still on it. So it kind of goes what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But besides, you don't want me to play anything that's an aerophone. Trust me when I say that.
All right. Well,
we'll be good.
Next time when you master it, we'll do another show on the didgeridoo, and you can.
Okay. That sounds perfect. That sounds perfect.
Nice. Well, that's the didgeridoo. It's a fascinating instrument for super old, super simple, but like just give some didgeridoo music a listen because it's a very distinct sound, and you will. I hope that you will immediately recognize the sound, and then you can put the two and two together, what you're actually hearing. A lot of different techniques, a lot of different cool recordings. Look at them. They're very beautiful. Like Daphne's is probably one of a kind. Because, trees are one of a kind. The only way you can get consistency, I guess, is if you are producing them without the termites.
We need the termites, unfortunately.
We need the termites. So if you want to interact with us and show us a picture of a didgeridoo or a recording of you playing a didgeridoo, you can do that on Twitter at OHVA Music. I'm on Twitter, Jeremy P. England. And then our podcast website is anchor.fm/OHVA Music. And you can send us voice messages. You can, listen to all of our past episodes and, just give us a shout out. So with that, I guess we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.